Well, next I'd like to turn to Fred Cosgrove, who's going to talk to us about trolley modeling. Fred, welcome.
I acquired a trolley layout from Warren Lewis, and it was quite an operation, moved from his house to my house. Warren was a traveling salesman, and I understand he was selling sand, and it's molding sand. So he made several trips out to Gary in that area, and he usually stayed in South Bend at the LaSalle Hotel. It just happened that the South Shore Railroad ran in front of the hotel. So he got a room that always overlooked the street so he could watch the cars come by. So unfortunately, he passed on, and I acquired the layout. And luckily, I had our trolley club president, Lou Hoy, and of course, Rich Humphrey to help take the thing apart so we could move it to my house. This is the way it was set up at Warren's house. Needless to say, this is disassembled, ready for shipment. These sections were not lightweight. So ended up having to get a trailer and having a couple of young fellas actually move them into the house for me. This is them set up in the basement at their new location. This is looking back on the layout. It's basically a U with one short leg. You can see the diagram over there on the panel of how it's laid out. We tried to get Warren to make a larger radius layout, but he was real picky about it. He said something about statistics says at his age, he was only going to live this long, and he didn't want his wife to have to get rid of it. Okay, so you can see some pretty sharp turns on it. This is basically, I assume, Michigan City with the yard here. The countryside. You can see there's a lot of various routes that could be taken. This is looking at Hudson Lake. At one time, this was a trestle that was filled in by the South Shore in later years. This is coming into South Bend. Lo and behold, around the corner, this big red building represents the LaSalle Hotel. Got a choice of two different lines you can come back on. Looking from the other side of the layout at Hudson Lake. Now this car in the foreground, I believe is an old Walters kit. Had the metal sides, cast ends, wood roof and that. And they were what they were called the stretch cars. Originally, South Shore had around 60-foot cars. One was 60 foot and the other one was like 61 foot, depending whether they came from Pullman or I forget the other manufacturer. But during the war, they needed more capacity, and they had dining cars and parlor cars left over from the 20s that they hadn't used. So they ended up cutting out roughly 14 foot along the side of the cars and cutting the usable car to have that extension put in to make it a longer car so they could get more passengers on it. Later on, you can see this is, I believe, a stretch car here. This one back here, you can see the windows are different. Later on, they took and stood of individual windows, they paired them up and put in air conditioning and sealed the windows. And this is a good shot of a car that's been stretched with the sealed windows and air conditioning, along with this car. And the last car here is without the air conditioning. Virtually all of the motorized cars that were lengthened ended up having the air conditioning put in, except for one car. That was number 22, and it was highly recognizable because it had the picture window frame on it, but it had the paired windows still being used on it. So coming back to the car, Warren had built that car, and it was a long car, and he went to run it around the layout, and lo and behold, the car couldn't clear the poles. So Warren did the reverse on it. He cut the car in half, took out 14 feet, and made it a 60-foot car again. These are some shots that were used for convention. So that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed it.
Fred, thank you so very much for sharing that with us. That brings back so many memories for me, particularly because I've seen that layout many, many times and operated on that layout. And Warren was a tremendous modeler and tremendous model builder. Warren's layout was the only trolley layout that I've ever seen that was O-scale, and the overhead was in-scale rail. And he bent that in-scale rail, nickel silver, I think it was, in-scale rail, and he bent that to form his overhead with it. And it ran flawlessly. It was something to see. But it's the only one I've ever heard of or seen that's done that.
Yes, and the interesting thing is, not only did it handle the pantographs well, it handled the trolley pole cars as well.
Absolutely. In fact, I never saw a pole come off the overhead on his layout. So thanks so much.
It was fine.
Thanks so much for sharing that with us.